Hey guys, welcome to another episode of MTG Steambrewey. This week I'm bringing you a Mardu Aggro deck, and I'm going to go and get right into it. We're going to start off with our top end of one Stormbreath Dragon. This could be a Zurgo, but I kind of like the Pro White a little bit more. It's also one of my favorite cards, a 4/4 Flying Haste Protection for 5 mana. It doesn't really need much more than that to be really good. But it has Monstrous, which normally won't happen in this deck, but sometimes it can. But when it becomes Monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent equal number of cards in that player's hand. In the decks that we're actually going to Monstrous against, it's actually going to be pretty good, because it's probably going to be a control deck. I don't see us Monstrous this against many other decks unless we just flooded super hardcore. But it's a very good card. Could easily replace it with a Zurgo and it'd still be pretty solid. So that's just up to you. I'm going with Stormbreath Dragon. We have two Butcher of the Horde. Since it's not English, I'll read it. Flying, sacrifice another creature. It gains, you choose which one it gains. It gains Flying, Haste, Vigilance, or Lifelink. Oh no, it gains Haste, Vigilance, or Lifelink. It already has Flying. 5/4 Flyer with benefits is very good, and when it has Sacrifice as the benefit, it gets so much better, because you can do a lot of really silly things with sacrificing. In this deck, there's plenty of things. You have Mardu Ascendancy and Goblin Rabble Master to make tokens to it. As the game goes on, your 1-drops and 2-drops can just get a little worse, so they're fine to throw under the bus to let this guy get through. And against aggro decks, giving this guy Haste and Lifelink, and if you had a Goblin Rabble Master or Mardu Ascendancy active for a couple turns, giving him all 3 in one turn, attacking, and then blocking on their turn and giving him Lifelink, is going to really swing a race. So, he's very good in the aggro matchups. He's just kind of good in all the matchups, as he's so powerful. 3 Mogus's Marauder, very powerful card. You've seen it in the mono black aggro decks. It pushes through a lot of damage, and there's not a lot of things that block black creatures outside of like a Siege Rhino, right now in standard. Giving a Goblin Rabble Master Intimidate, I've done that once or twice, that's pretty good. Always feels really good to do. So your Rabble Master get in for like 6 damage. This card is also just a really solid card. It's a worst case scenario for this card, it's a 2/2 with haste, which isn't super exciting, but in an aggro deck, that is better than a lot of 3-drops that you could be playing outside of a card like Goblin Rabble Master. Speaking of Rabble Master, we have 4 Goblin Rabble Masters. This card, I don't think there's much need to explain this. It makes tokens, those tokens turn sideways, and he gets bigger when those tokens turn sideways with him. He's $20 for a reason. There's a playset of him in here. I got lucky. I got mine at 5 a piece on Puka Trade. Really happy about that. We have 1 Timer at the Murder King. This is a card I've been a huge fan of. Sacrificing things is something I really like to do. I guess I'm like, Zam Black showed me the way of aristocrats when he built that deck, and I was just like, cool. I really like sacrificing things. Looks really fun. So I've been a big fan of this card. Being able to shoot our opponents for 2 is really good. In pretty much every matchup against aggro decks, we're normally just going to be blocking. We have a better long game than them, so we just try to stall and take as little of the damage possible. And he can come back, so he's a repeatable threat against like control of narrow range decks. It's really hard to kill outside of something like Banishing Light or Utter End if they can get us without a way to stop it. There's 3 Pain Seers in the main deck. Put these in here mainly pretty much only for the control matchup. They come out against mid-range and aggro decks. Against aggro decks, you don't want to take the damage. Against mid-range decks, you don't really get to get punched through with this guy unless you have a Mogus's Marauder. So he's really just a 2/2 for 2 in the mid-range matchup, which isn't very good. There's better options post-board. But against control decks, he's really amazing. He's a 2/2. They won't normally kill him very early, so you'll get to start drawing cards off him. We have also 4 Soldier of Pantheon. Protection from Multicolored means it can punch through a Siege Rhino. The game life is sometimes relevant. Not as much since Ravnik is gone, but it's still very good. It's a 1-mana, 2-power card. Pretty much the only real reason to play it. Protection from Multicolored is just kind of nice to have. 4 Bloodsoaked Champion. There's no real reason to explain why we want this card in our aggro deck. It's a base black-white deck with some red cards. This card is one of the better ones. It's a 1-mana, 1/2 that gets back. So you can sacrifice the Timer at Butcher of the Horde and then just put it back into play after you've attacked, which is always really good. We have 4 Tormented Hero. The Heroic is sometimes relevant. We do have Gnarled Scarhides on the deck, but outside of that, it's normally going to be a 1-mana, 2/1. Just a super aggressive cheap creature. Then Gnarled Scarhide. This one's in Italian, so I'll read it to you. 1 black, 2/1. It can't block. Bestow of 3 and a black. Bestow is you can cast this card as an aura by paying this alternate mana cost. It will no longer be a creature spell, so they can negate it. That's a heads up. They can Disdainful Stroke it, I think. No, they cannot. but they can negate it. They cannot disdainful stroke it. That is of note. But an enchanted creature will get +2/+1 and can't walk. So you can put it on an opponent's creature to punch through a bunch of damage, or you can suit it up on one of your guys to make them big enough to punch through something, and then when that creature dies, this guy comes back into play. We tested one Spearfield. This is the exact list I played at a game day. I went 5-1. I got first place. Spearfield, I thought it would be really good. I'm actually just going to cut it for Raider Spoilers. I've been testing this deck online. Raider Spoilers is really good. There's just a lot of incidental warriors. So, unless you're worried about a card like Circle of Flame, or a deck with 4 of Chandra, Pyromaster, don't bother with Spearfield. I'd recommend just playing Raider Spoilers, or just not even playing Anthem and just playing another Mardu Ascendancy, which is right here. I played with 2. I made the wrong call in the metagame. It was all aggro and mid-range. There was no control decks. I just wish I'd been playing more Mardu Ascendancy. This card is really good when your opponent's not playing 4 End-Hostilities, or like Drown in Sorrows in the sideboard. Mardu Ascendancy just gets really good. It beats Drown in Sorrow and Anger of the Gods if you can sack it, so that's nice. But whenever you attack, you get a 1/1 red goblin creature token on the battlefield attacking. That's for each creature. So if you go 1-drop, 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 Mardu Ascendancy, you attack, you get 3 goblins. It's always really good. If you want to play another Ascendancy, it gets even better. This also works very well with Goblin Robinmaster, as I've already said, Butcher of the Horde. This card is just really, really good. It is 75 cents when I'm recording this, so I'd recommend if you want to play with this card, you get some now, because that's pretty cheap. It's almost bulk. We tested with 1 Stoke the Flames. I drew it 2 times. One time I had to tip 2 Painlands to cast it. That was painful against an aggro deck. The other time, I killed his only creature after he destroyed my Butcher of the Horde. So, it was just kind of meh. And the few times I drew it in this particular build of the deck, there's not a ton of red creatures. Maybe, as I wrote in my article, if you're playing a more base red deck, this card gets a lot better. But in this version, it's not as good. You can't really convoke it consistently without a Goblin Rabmaster. So, I'm probably going to end up cutting it for something like another Crackling Doom. Once again, not in English. It's 1 red, 1 white, 1 black. Each opponent takes 2 damage. Then they sacrifice the creature they control with the greatest power. If they're tied, they choose. That's not on the card, but just a heads up if you play this card. This card was so good all game day. Even against the more controlly style of mid-range decks with not a lot of creatures, this card is still really good. It can kill a Sarkon. Worst case scenario, against Elspeth, it deals 2 damage, kills a token. I mean, that's not super exciting, but it does put it in like a Stoke the Flames or Lightning Strike range if you decide to play those cards. But normally it's going to be killing something big. It can kill Courser Crucifix. If your opponent plays a Sylvan Caryatid on turn 2 and you are on the play, you can kill that Sylvan Caryatid and punch through with your creatures that you played already. This card is just kind of really good. The worst case scenario against control deck with this card is it's 2 damage, and having burn spells against control deck is always nice, especially when you have so many ways to push through damage with Goblin Rabmaster making tokens, Mokusis Marauder, Butcher of the Horde, and Storm of Dragon flying over, and just going under all of their cards. Dealing 2 damage can normally end a game as the game goes on, or put them within range where your creatures can kill them. As well as, it's a removal spell, so that's also really nice. And then we have our mana base, just a bunch of 4 of dual lands. Our mana base is extremely painful. If you expect aggro, this deck isn't nearly as good. I did lose to mono red aggro, but then I beat it in the finals. In 3 games, it was all really close. It all involved me drawing Butcher of the Horde, with paired with like Athreos out of the sideboard. But that's for my article that you guys will get to read. Then there's 2 plains, 3 swamps, and 2 mountains as the basics. Alright, now we're just going to go ahead and head on to the sideboard. Hey guys, welcome back for the sideboard. We're going to go right into it. We're going to start off with 1 Chandra Pyromaster. Against control decks, this is just going to act as a source of card advantage and damage if we think we can just kill them with the 1 damage. Against mid-range decks, this can make their creatures not block like Siege Rhinos, Courser of Crucifix. This is going to be very nice, as well as if we just need to start playing cards off the top of our library, this can start drawing us cards. Against aggro decks, if they're like mono black or mono red aggro with just a bunch of X1s, you could bring this in. In that matchup, you're just going to be trying to outlast them, as your mana is a lot more painful, so you just have to go for the longer game, as your longer game is a lot better than them with Butcher of the Horde, Mardu Ascendancy, and Stormwrath Dragon in the deck, game 1. And then post-board with things like Chandra. We also have Zurgo. I'm a big fan of this guy. He has haste and he has 7 power for 5 mana. It's really good. I didn't need much more to play this guy. He attacks each turn, if able. I don't really care about that. He has 7 power and haste, like I said. I'm a big fan of haste and large amounts of power, but he's indestructible as long as it's your turn. Oh my gosh, that's so good. He is also 5 mana, though. He's not better than Stormwrath Dragon in the fact that he'll die to utter ends. He still dies to the sorcery speed removal that would kill a Stormwrath Dragon, but he'll also die to the instant speed removal on your opponent's turn. That would also kill him, so he's a lot less protectable on your opponent's turn. But whenever a creature dealt damage by Zurgo dies, he gets +1/+1 counter, so he just gets a little bigger. I really like to bring this in against aggro decks and mid-range decks, just because you need a way to punch through damage against mid-range decks. And against aggro decks, you're just going to be going for the longer game, so you just need a way to close the game out quickly once you get to the point that you can. This guy does that quite well. Ankle Shanker, this is solely for the mid-range matchups. It's a 5-mana 2/2 haste. Whenever it attacks, creatures you control get first strike and death touch. I really like this card a lot. I think it's really good out of the sideboards of a deck like this. For the mid-range matchups, once again with Siege Rhinos, Corsair, Krufix, Sylvan Caryatid, things that you normally just can't get through, this is going to allow you to get through those creatures while keeping your creatures around. One Ash Cloud Phoenix, I'm very excited about this card. It's a Phoenix that outside of Chandra's Phoenix, that I actually really like to play in Standard. It's a 4-mana 4/1 flyer that's going to just come back, and if you ever get to 6 mana, you can just start dealing TMs to your opponent, which will happen. I like to bring this in against control and aggro decks. Against aggro decks, it's going to block, and then come back and block again. Against control decks, it's just a threat that's really hard to kill. They have to spend at least 2 spells, unless they use a Banishing Light, or hit it with a Ashiok or something like that. It's just a really solid card overall. We have one Athreos. Since he's not in English, like many of my cards, he's a 5-mana, 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 black, 5/4, indestructible. As long as your devotion is less than 7, Athreos is not a god. Devotion to white and black, by the way, guys. His ability is, whenever a creature you control dies, target opponent, or I guess an opponent, pays 3 life, or that creature card returns to your hand. And in this deck, when you have Butcher of the Horde and Time Rat Murder King in there, that can get really good. As the game just grinds out, it can get really good. I actually brought this in against Mono Red at the top 8, thinking, if the game goes long, I'm going to win this. I just need to go long with Athreos. Because my whole game plan in that is really just rely on Butcher of the Horde or whatever I draw. And Athreos is really good at that. It allows me to block and then still be able to race him, which is very nice. Against control decks, or decks with just a ton of removal, he's just going to hurt them to get their cards unless they answer him first, which is pretty hard. They need Utter End, Banishing Light, something like that. We also have one Mogus's Marauder. This is really for the control and mid-range matchups. Against control, he's just another haster. Against the mid-range, it allows you to punch through their creatures. You don't really want this against aggro. You're not really interested in playing a 3-mana 2/2. You're not going to be attacking too often. We have one more Painseer for the control matchup. I did kind of build this deck to beat control, so that made all my game ones a little awkward at game day. But I won a lot of my games, regardless of the Painseer. He did really good work in some of the games, but normally he would just hit play and just be a 2/2. We have 3 suspension fields. Answers Course of Krufix, Siege Rhinos. Anything big out of like the Abzan mid-range deck is just kind of a nice catch-all removal spell out of the sideboard for the mid-range matchups. It's kind of all it's there for. We also have one Harness by Force, also really good in the mid-range matchups when your opponent's playing things like Siege Rhinos. I like it sometimes in the aggro matchup when you're on the play. You're going to stall the game out. So when you get to like 6 mana, you can take 2 creatures that can allow you to swing for a large amount of damage. If you have Butcher of the Horde in play, you can sack your opponent's creatures after that to the Butcher of the Horde. Or you could just take, if you really want to, just take one of your opponent's creatures, sack it to give the Butcher of the Horde Vigilance, sack one of your creatures to give it lifelink, attack, and then pass. It's always kind of funny to do. I didn't get to do that this weekend. I really wanted to. But still, I really like this card. We also have 2 Utter End. Here is the top 8 promo I got for making top 8. It's 2 colors, white, black, just exile target permanent. It's a catch-all removal spell, like Suspension Field is, but a lot less narrow and can hit anything. Can hit Planeswalkers, so it's not dead against control decks if you just want to have something to answer Elspeth. Against mid-range decks, I'll normally bring this in. Against aggro decks, I'll bring it in too.
Josh, can we go?
But
Get ready to go.
it's just a really good card.
Oh, gosh. Please would win.
And then the final 2 cards are 2 Mardu Charms. The modes on this are...
It's very charming.
Yeah, you can duress your opponent in instant speed, which is look at their hand, make them discard a non-land, non-creature card.
Beat me with that.
Yes, I did.
Ooh.
You get 2 1/1 soldiers, no 1/1 warriors onto the battlefield. Here's what I forgot: is they gain first strike until end of turn. I bring this in as Edric because the last mode is it deals 4 damage to our creature. But the 1/1's gaining first strike, I forgot that, so I blocked 2 of his creatures and traded with them. But my opponent forgot that tokens don't go to your hand when I had the Athreos in play, so he took 6 damage to not let them go back to my hand because I had Butcher of the Horde. I didn't think he would do it. I said it jokingly, and then he did it. But I also forgot they gained first strike, so we both just kind of done goofed. So there's my sideboard, guys.
Well, let's be honest. His was a bit more devastating.
I already wrote an article over this deck. I've made some slight changes to it since then, but I will be writing an article over my game day. A tournament report should be going up the same day this is, or sometime later in the week. I'm not sure when I'm going to get a chance to write it, but the slight changes are, I already mentioned, I'm going to cut the Spear of Heliod for like a Raiders spoils, and then I'm going to cut Stoke the Flames for probably another Ascendancy, because that Ascendancy is really good. But anyway, guys, here's my 75 I am playing right now. With the changes I just told you, that'll be the exact 75 I'll be playing. I really like this deck. I think it's really good. As long as aggro is not super popular, you won't have to be super stressed out in many of your games, as this deck's just really fast and really powerful. So, as usual, guys, you can find me on Twitter, at Pearsallsblog. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube. You can like our videos, leave some comments, tell us how terrible we are, or how great you think we are. One of the two. It's probably going to be terrible, but I'll take what I can get. You can also find our articles, well, my articles, on mtgbrodeals.com with a lot of writers over there. We've all been stepping up the content. They're all really good article writers over there. They're great people. They're really nice. If you interact with them, you'll know they're really nice. Go interact with them on Twitter. You can support MTG Brodeals on Patreon. Patreon.
There are also other
guys.
people. You can go support Peter Hollins because he sings and he's awesome. Or his wife. Whatever.
Bye, guys. Have a great day. See you next time.